as we face the prospect of hundreds of thousands more drones potentially being sent to us, to our allies, in attack by Iran. There are questions about whether, in fact, this is the right approach or we should be using a different technology to fight them. What do you think?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think you hit the nail on the head in that there is a real issue here in terms of the sustainability of cost, particularly if you're going to use exquisite systems to intercept these relatively low-cost Shahed drones. I think the United States is probably trying to not use things like its Patriot interceptors for this and holding those in reserve only when it's absolutely necessary. It's probably trying to rely on some other methods, but they're still fairly costly. Like we've seen F-16s, for example, or F-15s flying in the air and using anti-air missiles against these. We're now seeing Apaches that are also being used in this role. Traditionally, they hunt tanks, but now they're hunting Shahed drones. But we don't really have a lot of low-cost sustainable options at the moment.
Well, so when we consider that then, Kelly, when expensive as these things may be, when we consider the quantity we have of them and where they are, do we have adequate capacity in the Middle East right now, or are we going to have to be pulling these assets from other theaters?
Oh, well, I think when we combine both the missile threat, because there's still the ballistic missile threat and the drone threat, there's sort of a race going on right now between the ability of the United States and Israel, and now it seems Qatar, to be able to find, locate, and destroy the infrastructure for its Iranian missiles and the launchers, the drone facilities, to try to destroy that. So they can't get as much in the air and take off the pressure on the interceptors. But if you look at the basic math, particularly against the war, before the war, it certainly favored Iran and just sheer numbers. The question becomes, how effective is it being at degrading those capabilities? But the reality is, even what we've done so far, we've actually gone in significantly into our own stockpiles of these interceptors. And the important thing to really understand is that you can use these interceptors and buy down short-term risk today by using more of the inventory, but you can't remake these overnight. You can't replace them overnight. You're not probably going to even be able to replace them this year. We're talking about years to be able to replace these interceptors.
Well, then I'd love for you to help us interpret the president's post on Truth Social. Decode this for us, Kelly Grieco. He writes, the U.S. munitions stockpiles have at the medium and upper medium grade. You can qualify that for us. Never been higher or better. He writes, as was stated to me today, we have a virtually unlimited supply of these weapons. Wars can be fought forever and very successfully using just these supplies. Is that true?
Well, I am not sure what he means exactly by medium grade. I have two different thoughts in response. One is that it is true that when you're talking about shorter range things on offense, particularly if we're able to not rely as much on long range munitions and we're able to get closer to targets on Iran, you can rely on shorter range things. We have that in larger numbers. So on the offensive strikes, we can sustain this for quite a while. The air defense, missile defense issue becomes much more challenging. There are just certain realities around those stockpiles that we can't really escape.
Kelly, obviously, when we're watching the markets today, we are seeing major upward pressure on commodities, oil and natural gas prices surging as we consider whether or not the Strait of Hormuz is going to be safely navigable for tankers in order to get that product and crude out of the region. Is it possible for the U.S. or Israeli forces to do what proved very difficult to do with the Houthis in the Red Sea and make sure that the strait is secure for transit with the resources we have, and knowing we also actively are trying to play defense with the drones and everything else that Iran is sending out right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very tall order for the reasons that you highlighted, that we've, did this earlier with the Houthis, and the Houthis have, also been threatening that they're going to resume their strikes as well. The question is that it's not even one threat at this point. Then, one of the challenges here is you're going to have to start making some acute decisions, because if you want to protect commerce in the Strait of Hormuz, then those same, missile defense ships are not going to be able to provide some level of coverage for, the carrier strike group itself, or to help protect some of the ports of Gulf states. And so it's these kinds of trade-offs that are just really, that are cute, and we can't escape them. That's just the reality.
We understand that Iran was estimated to have about 2,000 ballistic missiles after last year's conflict with Israel. Based on what's taken place over the last 4 days, drones aside, Kelly, what do we think that might leave behind?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard to estimate because there's a lot we don't know. But I did see that a couple days ago, the Israelis announced that they thought they had destroyed about half the launchers. They were believed to have about 200 launchers before the war, and so they may be down to about 100. That's still significant. I haven't heard as much about like the stockpiles of the missiles themselves. My sense would be that, we'll know over time, I think particularly the next couple of days, as we start to see, to what degree they're able to sustain these salvos. If we start seeing a drop off, then we can have a higher degree of confidence that we've actually managed to destroy some of this capability. But it is challenging. We're talking about trying to find things that are on trucks that can blend in. These are widely dispersed, and the Iranians were smart enough to realize that they shouldn't rely on a centralized command and control in Tehran for leading its forces. And so local commanders have been authorized to conduct these strikes, and makes it harder. It makes it much more resilient as a target.